Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. Welcome to this week's episode of The Contented Narrative. I'll be looking at Bloodletting by J.R.Curtis. And this one was actually sent to me by the author as well. And by the looks of things, it looks like a debut novel. And it's a good book. I really enjoyed it. It's one that it had me guessing at certain points, but other times I was sat there going, oh, okay, well, I understand where this is going and I have a feeling. But then sometimes, like, one of sort of like these plots that come out of it took me completely by surprise. And I genuinely was like, oh my God, like, what's going on here? And it was very enjoyable. I mean, there was a couple of bits that took me out of it a bit. So for example, the narrative, he did quite like it when he was talking about the main character Abraham. He'd be having like this dream, but it sounded enough like it was actually happening, and then suddenly he was back into the real life. And I know that that's a common trope in quite a few books, and I do enjoy that. But for some unknown reason, this style of writing kind of took me out of it a bit sometimes. And that was just, you know, my opinion there. I did find sort of like occasionally I'd be reading and I'd be like, oh, and this, and I'm like, oh, right, okay, re-put myself back in the story. But I mean, I was invested in the characters. I genuinely wanted to know how the characters would be doing. And it's basically set around this group of people that are journeying in America way back when America was just a little babe. And so they're setting off and they hit, like, these people hear about a fort. So 3 of the members go off to this fort to try and get help and see if they can survive this winter. And as they go off, sort of, this is where the adventure entails, because when they get to the fort, it's completely empty. There's nothing there. Now, I found that quite interesting because I was like, oh, why is there no one there? Like, what's happened to the people? And it was really good, sort of like coming up on actually what happened. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And it was, when I was messaging the author about this, the whole sort of like fort idea and everything like that came from when he was like a Boy Scout out in America, and he saw this, you know, old fort, and he genuinely started thinking, oh, what could happen there? And I think that's a really nice little thing. And honestly, it took me a couple of days to read because it's such a easy narrative to follow. Because sometimes I do find that as you're reading it, you're like, oh, right, okay, gotta get through this 1,000 words now, when they could have just said it in a sentence. But this felt like he wasn't trying to just add everything to it. He was definitely keeping it nice and compact. And it's, you know, just over 200 pages or so. So it's not too long to read. But I genuinely did enjoy it. I mean, if it wasn't for the narrative at parts kind of taking me out of the story, I would have given it a higher rating, but it gets a 3 out of 5 from me. Now, when I was messaging the author again, he said that there were some points that he wrote and he felt a bit uncomfortable writing them, but he felt like they needed to be written, and he did a bit of research to make sure that everything made sense. And what made me laugh is when he was saying this, and I was like, there was at no point during that book anything that made me go, oh, no, thank you. And it's so funny because, I mean, American Psycho did that to me. That was an uncomfortable book to read. I was not happy with that book. Cool, that did make me feel like, ugh. But this one, I was like, have I become desensitized? Because I was thoroughly enjoying it in regards to sort of like the way that he was describing things. It wasn't too graphic, but it was graphic enough. And as novels go, you know, especially if you're sort of starting out, this is a pretty decent one. And I'd love to see what he does in the future. Now, obviously, if you want to rent it from the library or borrow it from the... Rent it? What are we, Blockbusters? If you want to borrow it from the library, I'm not sure if they will have it in our libraries, but do, obviously, because I think librarians can request books in, depending on if they'd be popular or not. But if not, I mean, you know, buy a paperback version, get it on Kindle, and I would definitely recommend reading this book. Now, if you agree or disagree with anything that I say, please leave it below in the comments, okay? And if you do buy books on anything that I do suggest or recommend, again, please leave it below in the comments. Let me know. I'd love to know if it's actually reaching people out there. Thank you for your continued support, and remember to always keep it contento.